Hello, I'm Clever Pigeon. This is my submission with post commentary for Anodyne 100% for the Themeathon marathon. We're going to get started with the game now. We first load up in a short tutorial area, which the game never gives a name, but is referred to in the game's code as blank. It's going to teach us how to interact with objects to let us through that gate. It tells us about opening the menu, and we go through a rift and enter the Nexus, which is the main hub world of the game. We're going to talk to Sage, who is a very relevant character in the story, sort of your guide through this world, and enter into an introduction area. We're going to... this game allows you to do something which I refer to as an entrance warp, which lets you go back to the start of a dungeon, but doing it there when you enter Street, this first area, actually warps you further. We're going to do it again there after we get the weapon to go back. And now we're going to do the wiggle glitch, which lets you wiggle across screen transitions like this by pushing up against a wall. And that lets you get out of bounds very easily in this game and skip a lot of things. So now we're coming to the end of Street, and we're going to enter the next area called the Woods. We're going to save because we're going to save warp to this place later. That's Mitra, another important character in the story. She's going to talk to us for a bit. And then we have 3 steps to get off screen before she talks to us again, so we can avoid a text trigger like that. We're going to continue to wiggle and wiggle out of bounds, so we can skip beating the first dungeon and getting a key which unlocks the next area. So we're going to head into the next area and enter... well, we're going to enter the fields, the next area. We're going to go and get one of the 37 cards that you need to complete the 100% category of this game. And we're going to wiggle to get it rather than doing the intended solution to the puzzle. And then after that, we will head off and we will get to the end of the game very, very quickly to unlock a broken power-up called Swap, which lets you rearrange the tiles on the map and basically explore the game world as you please. So here's the first card. We're going to void down that hole to respawn back out of bounds and walk along the edge of the map, just out of bounds, until we reach the right screen to enter the loading zone for the next area. So this area is called Terminal. There's a text trigger which you can avoid by not getting too close to Sage there. He tells you you need to come back when you have 36 cards, and that is the intended way to access the endgame area. We're going to wiggle out of bounds here again, and we're going to cross over into a parallel universe. Parallel universes in this game exist infinitely to the east and west of the main game map, with 1 tile of vertical displacement per parallel universe. So getting into this parallel universe allows us to skip that card gate and also skip the spoilers boss fight with Sage that you have to do to get into the final area of the game. So we walk through the parallel universe and get out of bounds at the top of it and re-enter the main universe on the other side of the map and walk into the loading zone for the final area. Here is where we get Swap, but we can only use it on specific screens at this point. So we're going to skip the final boss of the game to unlock it everywhere, or mostly everywhere. That's a colour puzzle which you need to do. It refers to other bosses in the game, which of course we haven't seen. And now we're going to wiggle some more to skip the endgame areas which you need to complete in order to access the final boss, Briar. So we just wiggle past there. That's the room you fight Briar in. But we can completely ignore it and just walk past it walk past that thorny gate thing which blocks us. Go straight to the end of the game to unlock the swap power-up. You're going to see me mashing text as well, as Briar and Sage talk to me on the other side of this screen. And I can easily get through text boxes by holding down one action button and mashing the other one, because both of them advance and then close text boxes. And that's the easiest way to make sure you don't waste any frames on text boxes. Interestingly, the exact number of lines of those text boxes is RNG. There are 2 patterns for it, and I don't really know why it changes at all or how it changes at all, but there you go. So that was the end of the game, and now we're going to scroll quickly through the credits by holding an action button, so we can get back into the main game. The game asks you to save at the end of these credits, so we're going to do that, and then we will respawn at the checkpoint we used in the woods area. So we will have saved and unlocked the swap, but we will be in the woods area, so we'll be able to continue from there. These are all of the places we haven't seen yet. So we enter the game again in the woods, and we're going to swap through to grab the cards here, and also a health upgrade called a health cicada, or cicada if you are of the American persuasion. So there's the cicada. I'm just going to stand and let it fly to us. Well, we stand where it flies to, and then it gives us the upgrade as soon as it touches us, as soon as it stops flying. So we save warp again, back to the checkpoint with the card we got and the cicada. Now we're going to go to the right, or maybe to the east I should say, grab another card, and we're going to enter the first dungeon from the exit rather than the intended entrance. We're going to save again because we'll save warp back out here later, and we're going to entrance warp to the start of the dungeon and make our way through, grabbing the cards and everything we need, skipping all of the puzzles, all of the enemies you have to kill to unlock gates, all of the keys you need to get from chests. I'm going to swap out of bounds and equip the broom because we're heading to our first boss. We're going to enter the first boss room from the back, and this is the first boss. This is the seer. The seer moves in a strict pattern. You've got free time to just mash and attack it, and then you just follow it around the room and try to hit it. I messed up a little bit there, but that's the basic gist of it. And after every boss, except for Sage and Briar, but we don't do either of those in this run, you get a health cicada. So we get the health cicada because it's required for 100%. Re-equip swap. We talk to Sage. We can't skip him this time. We're going to grab the boss card, continue on our merry way. That's a statue which is meant to unlock a sort of mid-game dungeon. You're meant to activate a power switch on a windmill to move 3 statues in the game world to unlock late game dungeons. But we can swap right past it because we've already unlocked swap. We're going to head to our next area where we grab cards from, and this is Youngtown. There's an intended puzzle here in which you are meant to stab and kill 11 of the townspeople in order to unlock entrance into a house which gets you a card, but we can skip doing that because we can swap through the back of the house and get into the house without killing anyone. In this area, interestingly, your broom is replaced with a sword. So there's all this sort of story stuff about how it's implied that the sort of killers the townspeople talk about wandering around, one of them is you. But also the sort of black creatures, they're also known as killers. They deal 6 damage to you. One of only 2 things in the game that does that. We're entering the next dungeon now. This is the apartment, which is supposedly where the mayor of the town lives. And we're gonna swap through. Gonna avoid the silverfish. You can make it through that room without getting hit by anything, but it's quite difficult. I'm gonna grab a card and entrance walk back before the spike log falls on us. Swap through to a much later part of the dungeon, and then walk out of bounds to an even later part of the dungeon. Swap back in by grabbing an out of bounds tile or an off-screen tile. Off-screen tiles, if you swap them, they are just the default tile, which thankfully is a floor tile and not a wall tile. This is the boss of this dungeon called the Watcher. You attack him, but before you attack him, you swap a tile out of bounds so you can just stab him without getting hit by any of his attacks. Good RNG is when he stays up there, but he can also do other attacks like that, like those ones. I missed one of those attacks. Didn't get a hit in on him, but that's fine. The most important thing is that I didn't take any damage in that fight. Because of the way the cicada fills up your health before giving you an extra hit point, it takes every point of damage you take before you get a cicada is approximately half a second lost. So we grabbed the card from that bit of the dungeon. We have walked out of the dungeon, walked to the nexus using the same mechanic as the entrance warp, then walked to the center of the nexus using the entrance warp, and we've gone back to the warp panel we've unlocked in the fields. We can grab dust and use it as a sort of raft to walk around on it. I'm going to swap through the fields to grab some cards in this overworld area. Continue swapping through. Grab another off-screen tile. Going by the frog. Water tiles, animated tiles, do not update their graphics when you swap them. So you got to make sure you swap a very specific set of tiles with water tiles to make sure you're not accidentally swapping around bits of wall and not allowing yourself to get through. This area is called Windmill. This is how you're meant to unlock the last 3 dungeons of the game. There are 6 dungeons in total. Where you're meant to have 3 keys, 1 from each of the first 3 dungeons, to get to the windmill, but we can walk right past them. We don't need to get any of the keys in 100% because we've got the swap from almost the beginning. And now you can see the statues moving. You might be wondering why we didn't just get the chest at the bottom of the windmill without opening it, because we could have swapped around the statues anyway. Well, that chest doesn't actually unlock until you activate the windmill. It tells you if you try to open it that there's some sort of magical force preventing you from doing so. We climb back down the windmill, swap back out of bounds, collecting the windmill card, and we're going to make our way to what is intended to be the 3rd dungeon of the game. And funnily enough, we are doing it 3rd as well in the order of dungeons. First, we're going to walk through some overworld areas to get there. We're walking out of bounds to get to this next overworld area called the Forest. We're going to grab some cards from here. Continue along our way. Swap through. That's a ghost of Briar, or a sort of vision of him, but we don't see him again in this run. He just appears there. I'm gonna surf on some dust again, walk down, make our way into the next area called the Cliffs. And we're gonna take the ladders, go and get some cards, and here in the Cliffs we also get an upgrade called the Jump Shoes, which we get those from Mitra. Naturally, they allow us to jump. Some movement I'm doing here is called One Train, which involves swapping the tile in front of me, selecting the tile, moving into it, and then replacing it, and doing that over and over again, so that I can constantly be walking into a floor tile in front of me to get through out of bounds areas. It's a bit risky though, because if you mess up and walk into a tile without selecting it to swap first, you softlock the game and you have to entrance warp. I'm gonna try and jump so I can grab the card while Sage is walking towards me there. I missed it though. This is the next boss, the boss of the mountain cave. This is the wall. There's a fair bit of RNG in this boss's attacks. His hands can hit you like that. He also sprays those orbs. He also attacks using this sort of pink laser line. As long as you stay out of his way, there's not really too much of an issue. Try not to get hit. Not too difficult. When I first tried to learn this game, I started with any percent glitchless, and gave up on it because I found this boss really hard, but when I came back to it and learned 100%, I was fine for some reason. So we've killed this boss. You can actually softlock and he won't give his ending text. It won't give his death text, and it will just softlock for some reason, and you have to save and quit and try again. But thankfully that didn't happen here. We grabbed the cicada, filled up our health, and we're going to swap out of bounds again, walk to this sort of side area which is located on the same map as the mountain cave, and collect the extend upgrade for the broom, which gives out harmful dust when you stab with it, which gives you an extra tile of length to damage with. That was a trick called door hurdling. That's one of only 2 places you can do it. You just hop over the door to get out of bounds. The other place you can do it is the other end of that staircase. So we're going to walk back out of bounds after collecting that card. Back into this second area of the dungeon. Grab a card again, entrance warp, and then leave the mountain cave. Swap through that rock to avoid just going around, little time save. We're going to jump to get onto ladders because your ladder climbing speed is slightly slower than your standard walking speed. We're going to swap to get to a ladder we're not supposed to get to from that end of it. Grab a card, make our way up to the next area. Which probably isn't an area you're expecting. It's called Space, and it's this sort of abstract, weird area ruled by 2 cube kings, neither of whom we see in this. There are 2 cards in this area, one on the right and one on the left, so we just make our way to each one. We've unlocked the warp panel from the Nexus, so after we get each card, we warp to the Nexus and then jump back into the Nexus warp thing. I'm not sure what you'd call it, but you jump back into the portal, the Nexus portal, and go back to this area. Interestingly, if you're facing up, you can jump straight into the Nexus portal, as you see here, without waiting for the area loading animation to completely finish, which you can't do if you're facing another direction. Interesting little bit of tech. This is the next dungeon called the Hotel. That city skyline area is actually part of the dungeon map, but the entrance for the dungeon is located a little further in, so we can entrance warp, just like we did in Street, to get further into the dungeon. Gonna swap past this key gate and save warp there for some save warps we're gonna do in this dungeon while we get some cards. Messed up a little bit here and got my swaps mixed up, but that's fine. Managed to rectify it. Gonna come back in bounds into this area, jump over that that thing. I'm not sure what it's called, but jump over the thing that tries to chase you and get you. Take the lift. We can actually swap into the side of the loading zone. We take it to floor 2 first. We save warp again. That's the key block text, which you have to try and avoid, but it's quite difficult. We're gonna go to floor 1 now, and face this boss, which is the manager. I think this is actually one of the hardest bosses in the run. It's quite difficult to avoid all of the dust that it spews out in this first phase. You have to knock it around the water a bunch. Grab the health, because that means less time wasted on the cicada later. It's RNG for this phase of the boss, how high up it goes in the room when it walks backwards, which can make it kind of annoying. I didn't get particularly good RNG there. So yeah, I lost some time there, but that's fine. It's one of the more difficult bosses. I'd say the most difficult in the run. Grab the boss card, save warp again. You've got to be careful when you save warp, because the option just below it saves and quits the game. So although you haven't lost any data, you do waste time loading the game up again. Gonna walk to the Nexus warp panel, and then warp to the center of the Nexus and warp into terminal again. Avoid the Sage text trigger like we did near the start of the run, and then come back into the field, swap out of bounds, and walk down to this area called the beach, which is the overworld area before the second dungeon of the game, the Red Cave, or one of the overworld areas before the second dungeon. There's actually a second overworld area, which we'll get to in a minute. We're going to swap through the beach. You'll notice I went onto a screen with a Nexus warp panel on it. That's a deliberate thing, so I can unlock that warp panel to use in a minute. Going to swap through that gate, or past that gate, and grab the cicada. Make sure I'm facing upwards, so that I can jump into the portal as soon as possible. Come back to this warp panel. You're meant to push this fisherman off the pier and into the whirlpool to unlock this area called the Red Sea, but you can just swap right past him and avoid his death animations. Gonna swap through to this this card with one of the red walkers, creatures you see in parts of this area. Otherwise, if you don't swap to that chest, you've got to take a really long winded route round to see it. We've entered the dungeon now. This is the Red Cave. We're going to swap through to a side area of the Red Cave, where you get the room widen upgrade, which spreads harmful dust, one tile to each side of you, when you attack with your broom. Gonna swap past the key gates there. Gotta solve some platforming puzzles to do that normally, but we can swap past the key gates to get straight to the card. That's a sort of secret room with a red thing. I think it's meant to be the boss of this area called the Rogue, smoking a joint. But, you know, it sort of vibrates there. Get to it. This is a secret staircase how you can get to it, but we've come up the other end. So after I got that card with the gate in front of it, I walked out of bounds, and well, I fell down a hole, so I respawned out of bounds, but that doesn't matter. This is the boss of this area called the Rogue, which you saw in that picture of it smoking the joint a second ago. You can stand in a safe spot to stab it without getting hit, but then it starts to move around, so you have to move with it. Big waves that it shoots knock you off your dust, as you saw, and that's pretty bad. but it's manageable. The best strategy, I think, is just to stab it as much as you can before you get knocked off your dust, and then get back on the dust as quickly as possible. Now it's been beaten, we're avoiding sage and avoiding walking in any of the water. We walk past into this late game area called the circus. No, this isn't the circus, my bad. This is the area before the circus, called the underground labyrinth. It's referred to in the game's code as cell. I think it's also referred to in the game's code as train for some reason, but I prefer cell, so that's what I'm calling it. Gonna grab a cicada that's sitting around the map here. And save warp back to that save point in the first room of this area. Swap into a hidden area and use a portal to access this this area in the top left corner of the underground labyrinth. Swap through again, grab a card. That enemy on the card is called a chaser. I think you also saw one in some of the screens of the underground labyrinth. They also deal 6 damage, so just like the killers you saw in Youngtown earlier. We're going to walk across the top of the map to enter the final area of this run, but also the last dungeon of the game, called the circus. So this is the circus. That last bit wasn't. This is. We're going to, again, swap through the dungeons, avoid all the obstacles, get past all of the puzzles really easily, swap out of bounds, sort of make our way through in a very non-linear way. That's a bat, or a so-called annoyer that shoots fire. Then there are these clown enemies. They start up stacked like that, and you have to hit it 3 times, and they get knocked apart. And then each one of the clowns takes 1 hit to kill. We're gonna swap back out to get the. We're gonna swap to get the card there and swap back out of bounds. You've got to make sure not to talk to the rock because it actually says quite a lot and can lose you a fair bit of time. I'm gripping the broom out of bounds there so I can hit that clown stack as soon as possible. So I've got to kill these enemies to get the gate open, because you can only open a chest from the front, as you might imagine. Gonna swap through again. Now we're gonna enter the boss room for this dungeon. The boss of this dungeon are the servants. I'm gonna manipulate their RNG so they don't run around too much by standing in that specific spot and stabbing with my broom before they get there. And if I do all the movements correctly, they move just like they did there. And that's the fastest way to kill them. We're going to grab the cicada again and do the last little bit of the run. And grab the final card, card 26. We're going to skip going the long way around by swapping through these pillars. Excuse me, my voice is going. And there's time. Time ends on the collection of the final item required. You'll see now here, I'll go through the items in my menu. For 100% you need to collect 37 cards, so the normally accessible cards in the main game, not the post game. All of the health upgrades and all of the weapon upgrades. But along the way you also collect the weapon itself and the jump shoes, because it's just faster to do those. So thank you very much for watching. That was Anodyne 100%. I apologise, because in the last few minutes of that my voice started going. My throat's kind of dry at the moment. But yeah, I apologise for that, but thank you very much for watching, and thank you for considering me for the Themeathon. Thank you very much.